back everybody. I am Mohib, your trainer for this entire free Spring series. Hope you have liked and subscribed my channel and shared with your friends. In continuation of this series, today in this class I talk about Spring modules and all. So without wasting much time, let's get straight into today's class. But before that, click the subscribe button. So, as you can see, in main we have the Spring framework, and this Spring framework consists of different modules. For example, the first module we have here is the Spring Core module. Inside Spring Core module, we have different other modules like Core, Bean, Context, Spring Expression Language. In the first, we talk about what Spring Core and Spring Beans are. Actually, Spring Core and Spring Bean, which are the part of Spring Core module, means the Core module and Bean module, they provide all Spring Framework fundamentals. This means that all Spring Framework stands on these core modules like Spring Core, Bean, Context, and Spring Expression Language. Among all these four modules that exist in Spring Core module, the Core and Bean modules are the most important modules of Spring Core. Spring Core and Spring Core module and Bean module provide dependency injection and IOC features for Spring Framework. So we can say that these two are very important, and with the help of these two modules, we inject object from one class into another class using XML files. So if we want to learn the Spring Framework and want to become master in Spring Framework, it is recommended to become master in Spring Core module. With this I mean that we know the Core module, the Bean module, Context, and Spring Expression Language. So we have to give much of our time in learning Spring Core. As I have mentioned in my first video, in my previous video, that if you want to become master in Spring Framework, it is recommended to become master in Spring Core module. Once you are good and you have good knowledge about Spring Core module and how to utilize your knowledge and how to implement all your theory knowledge into practical, then you will be able to understand the Spring Data Integration module and Spring Web module. So these are the two modules that exist in Spring Core module that they provide dependency injection and IOC. With these we'll learn about property injection, constructor injection, and all these things we'll understand with these two parts. And the context module of Spring Core, this inherits all the features from this Bean. It means whatsoever we have in Bean module, they all exist in Context. But Context at the same time it has its own features as well. For example, in Bean module we have the factory design pattern feature and IOC and all these things and so on. All these features will be inherited to Context, and inside Context we will have other features plus these features. For example, here we have internationalization. We have, for example, event propagation, resource loading, transparent creation of context, and we can also have how to create context in Servlet. All these things will be here, and at the same time this module, the context module, provides Java EE, Java Enterprise Edition features like EJB, JMS, and basic remoting concepts. All these things will exist in context module of Spring Core. Spring Expression Language, it is also a powerful module of Spring Core module used for querying and manipulating expression language. Actually, it is basically used for manipulating object graphs at runtime. What I mean by this is that with the help of this module of core module, we can put object or get object values. It is like extension, if you remember extension we used in JSP. On the top of this Spring Core module, we have other parts like AOP, which stands for aspect oriented programming. We have aspect, we have instrumentation, we have messaging. So let's first talk about these two. I talk about AOP, which stands for aspect oriented programming, and the second one, aspect. They help us to define method interceptions and cat points. Once again, I'm defining this one. They define method interceptors or point cuts. What do you mean by this statement that interceptors and point cuts? It means that with the help of interceptors and point cuts, we clearly decouple the code. It means that with the help of AOP and aspects, we can get the feature of loose decoupling. And we can also define interceptors as, we can say that interceptor means that we can perform something whenever we want to perform something special before or after a specific method, then we use AOP or aspects. So interceptors and cat points, we can decouple our code. Next one, we have instrumentation. What do you mean by instrumentation? Actually, I'll not cover this part in Spring Framework. It provides us class instrumentation support and class loader implementation to be used in some certain application servers. I'll not talk about this one in this series in Spring Framework, but I'll cover the the core module, Bean, context, Spring Expression Language, AOP, aspect, and messaging. So what do I mean by messaging? It is used to serve as a foundation for messaging application. Means that with the help of this, we can map messages with methods. When creating messaging application, we use messaging module. So on the top of these, we have the Spring Data Integration or Spring Data Access. In Spring Data Integration or Spring Access, we have JDBC, ORM, JSM, and OXM. So what is JDBC? What is the function of Spring JDBC and Spring Data Integration? Actually, it provides extra abstraction layer. What do I mean by extra abstraction layer? Means that, for example, in JDBC, we used different classes and interfaces in order to communicate with our database. For example, we use prepared statement, we use connection interface, and so on. These were the interfaces that we implemented them, and we created object of them. Of course, we cannot create object of an interface in Java, and you know that in Java we cannot create object of two things: one abstract class and the second one is interface. Actually, we are creating the object of its implementation class. So JDBC, in Spring JDBC, it provides us extra abstraction layer for old JDBC code. Like here, we do not need to write all the boring JDBC code, but it will give you one specific interface. Through that interface, you can simply or easily connect with your database and interact with the database. It is an API having clean JDBC code and can use to connect with database. On the other hand, we have ORM. So what is ORM? This is used when we want to use Hibernate. So if you want to use Hibernate or any ORM framework in Spring Framework, then we use a Spring ORM. If you have watched my previous video, in the first definition of Spring Framework, I said that Spring Framework is framework of frameworks. Now here, if you want to use any other framework integration with Spring Framework, then we use Spring ORM. Of course, I'm talking about ORM Spring frameworks. This provide integration layer. This provide integration layer. This one provides abstraction layer. So integration layer, by this I mean that it means that if we want to use any other ORM tool or integrating ORM tool in our application, then we use this module. For example, in the example I told you, the Hibernate or JPA. So when we want to use these, if we want to integrate these kind of ORM tools or frameworks, then we use Spring ORM. On the other hand, we have OXM. What do you mean by OXM? OXM stands for Object XML Mapping. Object XML Mapping. So this provides an abstraction layer once again. So this is abstraction layer, this is integration layer, this is again abstraction layer. So it's an abstraction layer for XML. If you want to perform Object XML Mapping, then we use this module of Spring Data Integration. It means in Spring Data Integration or Data Access, we have this module. When we want to map our object using XML mapping, then we use this one. And this we can also have some frameworks like Astra or XXray, JAXP tool. And if we want to use these frameworks and tools, then we use Spring OXM. We also have JSM, which stands for Java Messaging Service. With the help of this, we can consume and produce messages in our Spring framework. And it is an interesting part of Spring Data Integration or Data Access, through which we can perform messaging inside our application. So beside these, for example, we talked about Spring Core module and these modules, and also we talked about Spring Data Integration Access. We also have one other that's called Spring Web. That's called Spring Web. So what is a Spring Web? In a Spring Web module, we have the Web, Servlet, Portlet, Websockets. With the help of Spring Web module, we can create web projects. We can implement MVC, or if we want to create REST API, so we use Spring Web module. With Spring Web module, it also provides us some other web-oriented features like file uploading, REST API creating, and all these things. If we want to create, then we use Spring Web. We also have another part that is called the testing part or the test. It provides support for unit testing and integration testing. It provides JUnit and test engines. It also provides some mock objects for testing. So in all these modules that we have covered in Spring Framework, we'll have in-depth discussion over Spring Core. In Spring Core, I'll cover the complete parts like the complete modules like core, bean, context, Spring Expression Language. And also here I'll cover about, so this one, these three. I'll also cover AOP, aspect, messaging, and in Spring Data Integration, I'll cover JDBC, ORM, OXM, And in Spring Web, I'll talk about Web, Servlet, and Portlet. These are the things that I'll cover in this series. And also do remember that I'll also cover the testing part of the Spring framework, in which I'll show you how to do unit testing and the test engines inside the Spring framework. So this is enough for this video. We'll see you in next video. Till then, goodbye.